Hello, I'm Dr. Charlene Smith with Dr. Betty Harris and Ms. Carol Abrams. Welcome to Setting It Off Senior Style on TAN TV, the African American network where we have a local feel with a global reach. Today, we're going to talk about nurturing connections and intimacy for senior dating. It's important to explore the emotional and the physical health when you're starting to have connections, especially later in life. So, today we want to talk about different things that can help you create that emotional closeness, that intimacy, being a senior, dating, and maybe even in a long term relationship. So, I'm going to turn it over to Carol to get us started. Carol?
Uh, One of the things I think is very important when you first start is being an active listener so you can know what your partner is wanting or desiring, paying attention to the verbals and nonverbals, and then being straight and up honest with them about where you are physically and emotionally and your attachment. What how you're attaching. What do you want to be closely attached, or you want to be loosely attached, or how much time you want to spend with them? That will set the tone of where your intimacy is going to grow to.
I agree. That's important. People should tell you who they are up front. And when they do, you should listen to them. I was in a long term relationship, and my partner said they're a better friend than they are a partner, love partner. And I didn't really pay attention to that. And so, as far as intimacy went, I thought that we were in a very intimate long term relationship, but come to find out they were more on a friendship basis. So, good, clear communication is important because it does affect your level of intimacy and that connection.
So,
Any comments, Betty?
No, I agree. I agree.
So, Carol, you were talking about connections and different types of relationships because as seniors, some people may just want a travel companion. Some may just want a friend that'll go out to dinner with them, but others may want more. What do you think determines those kinds of desires a person may have?
well, first they come with their own needs when the relationship starts. So you have to listen to what their needs happen to be. If they tell you that they are looking for someone to be with them all the time for the rest of their life, and you're not interested in a lifelong partner, that's a good sign to say, well, this is not for me. The other, it may come a little bit later on, but you should share with each other what the relationship look like. And I always like drawing a picture. Whether you want someone to travel with you, whether you want to have someone to go out to dinner, to dance, be an escort, you should describe those things to that person. And when they're talking about being intimate, you want to know what their definition of intimacy is. Is it the touch, or is it sexual? So you have to make that clear. If you're not into the sexual relationship, then you should make that very clear right then. You can be cuddling and touching each other without having sex. But of course, that's really difficult sometimes for men. So you have to really work hard to get that across to them. And once they realize that, then they would have to make a decision whether or not this relationship is for them. But you can't be wishy-washy with them. Can't say, well, I think I want to, or I can't. You have to be very clear. No, this is not something I want. I want a partner that be a lifetime partner that's looking for someone to be there, to share time with, to travel with, to even listening to the problems and now discussing the different ups and downs of life. And to also make it clear that you don't want to be a caregiver. You should have a caregiver plan and put in place at this age. This is what I need to have happen if I get incapacitated, and I need to know what your caregiver plan happen to be, so that you're not looked on as going to be the nurse for them, because it's very difficult to be a nurse for someone at this age, especially when you're both walking on crutches or walkers. So you have to look at the fact that you need to have somebody and something set in place, and and know that you can have a lifelong partner like that. You can have, and some people call it a buddy relationship. But the important is knowing what that relationship is and how intimate you want to be. A nice touch in the hand or on the back. You get hugs. When you've been away from a real intimate relationship, getting hugs are very important. And I
Mhm.
found that during the when we had COVID, that you would get hugs at church a lot when people that have lost their spouse and no longer have anyone there, that they love that touch. And when you got to the church with a mask on, you couldn't get those hugs anymore. So that they lost that feeling of closeness, and it was devastating in my church when I saw that going on. So we had the thing that we did the wave like this, the hug like this, and just symbolize I want to hug you, but we know that we can't now. And that's important to me when you have a partner, that you give those signals to them, let them know when you want and what you need, and be very clear about it at all times.
So, Carol, I hear all that, and I know your personality. I'm an extrovert. So, I'm sorry, introvert. Those of us that are introverts, that's kind of difficult for us to do.
I know, and that's why you're going to run into problems too. Because the and you have to understand that goes with it. it I I've dated, in fact, all the men that I have dated, unfortunately, have been introverts. I don't know why I have never gotten an extrovert, but they've been introverts, and it's hard for them to relate what they're feeling. So I try to be sensitive and say, I don't like being in the counsel mode with them. And did I understand you to say? I want to I want to say, this is what I want. Would you please write a list of things that you found is important? Because you may not be able to verbalize it, but you put it down on paper and give it to them. Say, this is what I would like to have in a relationship. And then maybe it'll be easier to discuss it that way. I found that that works very well with my 47 years of marriage with my introvert husband, who did not say very much at all, but put it on paper. And then I can go back and refer to the paper and say, hey, we had this paper and we wrote out all these things that we wanted to have done. So let's go back over them and discuss where we went wrong. And that keeps you on track, and it sort of keeps that blame thing away.
Hmm.
So I think that's important. In fact, I'm going through that right now with a relationship, trying to get that clear with the person what I want. And I care about them tremendously. But I just want it very clear. This is what I will or will not do in a relationship. And I think that should be right up front, even though they don't believe you. Okay.
That's what I was going to talk about. It kind of goes back to that when people tell you who you are, when people tell you who they are,
Mm-hmm.
believe them. If you can get them to write those things down, I tried that technique in a relationship and it just didn't go well. And later on, I figured out that maybe they just really don't know themselves, what they want, what they desire, and sometimes it's a little bit much for guys. I hate to say this, but sometimes guys are just very simple, and when you start throwing complicated things at them, they kind of shut down. Having good communication is key, but again, sometimes we don't have someone that's a good communicator because they may not know. And the other thing, I tried, there's a show called Goop um,
Oh,
on
yeah.
one of the cable stations or
Mm-hmm.
something. And on there, they have a little test as to what's your sexual preference.
Yeah.
And most men are in the type where it's all about sex.
Mm-hmm.
There was sex, kink, I think it was romance, and there was another one. And most of the men ended up in the sex one because they were like, this is what the turn on is actually having the sex. Whereas women tend to be more of the intimacy, the romance, maybe even some kink. And kink is like the little feathers and little soft whips or, those kinds of things. So I tried to get them to take the thing, and they said, well, sex is it. And I'm like, can't be. Because they would do other things, but they didn't want to explore it. So, what do you suggest in that kind of situation where you're trying to get the communication, you're trying to understand what their level of intimacy is and what their wants and desires are? How do you handle that?
Is that to me?
Yes, Carol.
Well, I think that to me, putting it in writing sort of helps the person to reflect back on it when you're not present, and let them write out some of the things that they want. Excuse me. And the other part is then you help them when you're touching them or you're saying anything, let them know that feels good to me or this not. Is this okay for me to do this? Be very clear about what that is. And if they're touching you in a way that you don't feel comfortable with, tell them. The other part is the men are more visual than women about their relationships. So it's clear you have to be clear to them what it is that you want, because sex is seen to be the number one thing in their brain. But what I also have found out, as men grow older, because their body betray them, they are in denial that it is. When I say betray them, is that they're no longer able to get a full erection. And when they cannot do that, they feel, I don't know what they feel. I just know they keep trying. And the key thing is to keep on making them understand that this is not satisfying to me. A full erection does not satisfy me. So let's not get into this relationship where we're supposed to have sex and I'm all hyper and you can't fulfill. That creates a lot of unnecessary tension. So I think if you get it up front, my physical being is that I cannot do this, this, and this, and be upfront with them about it. And men will not say that I cannot have sex. And then some that are gone through process that they know that they cannot, like if they had prostate cancer, and they get into a relationship with you, and they find out that you're not as interested in the sex, they go, that's great. What I found with some of my friends who are married to men or that's on their senior part of their lives is that they wait up for their wives to go to bed and go to sleep so they won't be approached about sex. They have to be able to. This I've seen it happen too many times with my girlfriends because they're all over 75 and their husbands are not able to perform now, but the husband do not want to say that. So they do things to keep from getting in bed and getting in situations. But and the wives simply say, honey, we can reminisce about the times we have experienced, but we don't have to do that now. Or I'm too tired and I'm not physically able to do that. But let's think about all the good times, and then you're cuddling and you're kissing and holding, but he doesn't have to perform, and that takes all that away from him. So it makes it a lot easier for you too, unless you're horny. Okay,
So Diane says, sometimes a couple might not want nothing but someone to spend time with.
that's right.
After a certain age, sex might not be important.
Mhm.
And I agree with her.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Well,
Somebody
Evelyn
said,
says most men are in denial that they can no longer perform like they used to.
That's right.
What do you, what do you do with that person?
You give them
again,
support.
yeah, support and understanding. And so, couple of things. Okay, so if they cannot perform by having regular intercourse, there are other things that can be done: oral sex, mutual masturbation. Um, somebody said that older men have to fold it in. And so I haven't experienced that one, but I've heard about it. And if that's the case, then I would say, well, do what you can with it while it's folded in. Again, it may be a thing where you have to adjust because of the inability to have the quote regular sex. We talked about sex toys on another episode. This may be one of those situations where some sex toys can come in and enhance that. Also, depends on the man and how much they want to do it, but there are medical things that can help with that. There's implants,
Mhm.
there's injections, there's herbal remedies, there are clinics that men can go to. But I also want to make a point here, right quick, that not all sexual relationships are heterosexual, but all relationships are going to go through health issues, even as seniors. So, regardless if it's a heterosexual relationship or the LBGQT type of relationship, it's all about communication and working with each other to find what works. I had a situation where the person was really more kinky than they wanted to admit, and we were getting it on, and they started doing like this choking thing to me, and we had to stop because I'm like, I've been through too much for you to want to be trying to choke me doing this stuff. I said, you're on a real dangerous path here because I tend to react to violence, and I react with violence, and that's part of my PTSD stuff that I went through because of a past really violent relationship. So we had to stop and we had to talk about that because that was a real trigger for me. And I didn't want to hurt him, but it took everything I had to keep from hurting. So it had gone past the sexual part to a violent situation. But communication is key. And yes, we are talking about the heterosexual relationships, and that's what we are used to. But I just wanted to make a point that some of these dynamics we talk about do happen in other types of relationships. So when you're talking about intimacy, it's about what works for the couple.
Making plans too for it. I mean, you can plan for those intimate moments to make them really special and memorable, and that takes a lot of pressure off the guys if the women sometimes to initiate some of the plans. And if you know what you like romantic settings, or you want to have sunset. I mean, just making the plans to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. I mean, in Florida, that's easy. You get on the East Coast and you see the sun comes up, and you go on the West Coast and drive 2 hours, and you're over on the West Coast, and you can see the sun set. And that can be romantic settings where you touch, take pictures, and how make building memories. And that's an intimate time that you're spending with them without it being sexual, because all of your intimacy can, well, I would say it should not all be sexual. If it is, maybe, well, I don't know, for people that maybe that's all they want. But if you want a real relationship, you want more time other than just the hour you're in the bed because you want to know what to do with the other 23 hours, okay?
An hour? Wow. Okay.
Well, I said, what you want to do with the other 23 and 45 minutes?
Evelyn says, I believe in the safe word when things get out of hand.
Oh, good point. Good point. Especially when people role play, that is key in role play. Well, I should say if they're going to get into the S&M kind of role play, a safe word is very, very important. Good point, Evelyn. Thank you. That's another thing is role play. Not all role play has to be S&M. Role play can be going to a nice bar and act like you're picking each other up. Get a room and kind of slip the key to your partner and act like it's a one night stand. Role play is great. That's another way to create more intimacy because it's just the two of you and having a great time pretending, playing fantasy.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
one aspect of this topic that we have not discussed is the fact that there are some men out there that will allow their wives to have a relationship with someone else if they can't produce.
Again, it's communication
Mhm.
and what works for that couple. Um, I've had girlfriends that the husband is not able to, and a whole range of go ahead, I don't want to know about it. If you're staying out overnight, I know something's going on, just be safe. I mean, it's a whole range of agreements. Again, that's something that's going to work for that couple. I had an older lady tell me one time because I was in a relationship. It was a very committed relationship. It wasn't marriage, but it was very committed. And we were having problems in the sexual area, and I was very, very frustrated. And so I was getting ready to go out there and have an affair, so to speak. And I felt really bad about it. And I think I may have even had this conversation with one of y'all. But, God doesn't want you out there just being with all kinds of people. But this older lady told me, she said, honey, go out there and get your needs taken care of, then come back and get on your knees and ask God forgiveness. So, it just depends on what's happening with that relationship. You want to have respect and love for that person. And so communication, it's always about communication. And if other people are that open and want an open relationship, then that's that couple's business and nobody else.
So I just want to mention to you that when you're with this in this relationship, it's good to know your partner's love language. That's really good. I My husband had one of service, and he would do all these nice things for me. And he would tell me, he said, "Oh, Carol, you didn't iron my shirts and something. What does that have to do with it?" Or cleaning my house and all those things. And that he saw that him keeping my car clean, keeping it service, that was his love language. To me, he was just doing maintenance. I didn't see it as love language. So I liked his time and touch. And he was an introvert, so he wasn't into a whole lot of coloring and stuff. So we had to really work on that. And I had to let him know that we can hire a maid to keep the house clean, and we can hire somebody to wash the car, but then nobody's going to sleep with you. So we have to look at that part, is that we have to clear that line of what that love language is. So I had to start looking at acts of service for him personally, not the thing that he grew up in his background, that he saw this, that love was from his grandmother taking care of grandpa with all of his needs and keeping him house keep. I wasn't for cooking, and I mean, those are the kind of things that he wanted, and I didn't have those qualities. So we had to look for things that I could provide for him, a service that he would understand. That was very important, and it took some time for us in our first part of our marriage to get that straight, because I was confused then.
I have a thing about tacos and the five love languages.
Oh,
The first one is of affirmation, and it's your tacos are delicious.
yes.
The next one is of service. I made you tacos. The
Mhm.
next one is giving gifts. Here's a taco. The other one is quality time. Let's go out for tacos together. And the other one is physical touch. Let me hold you like a taco. But those are the five languages, and that's kind of how it translates. Is
Mhm.
that when we know what makes someone else feel loved, and I
Yeah.
think that's what creates the intimacy. Um, so, Betty, did you have any other points? Carol, any other points?
No, but Evelyn has a comment in here. And she says, I remember my dad asking his best friend to escort my mom to an event. And I thought it was weird, but he was confident she was going to try anything, but later understood they obviously had trust in their relationship.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Mm.
Oh,
awesome.
one other thing I want to add to it, in this um, intimacy and stuff, you have to be comfortable enough in your relationship when you make a mistake to say I'm sorry and ask for forgiveness. That is very, very important. To be humble yourself when you make that mistake, and that puts you in a vulnerable position. But it also enhances your relationship because you come closer together when you have that division and you put it back together. It's wonderful.
I also think at this stage of life, game playing shouldn't be happening, but it does.
It is.
But for me, I'm like, tell me the truth. Let's communicate this and work through it. I don't like the do it and apologize later. Let's have a conversation up front. If you're not satisfied about something, tell me so I can work on it, or be open to, if I say there's something I need, you can be open to it. I think at this point, it's important to be able to communicate honestly. And so maybe at this point, too, it's necessary to write things down, like you said, Carol.
Oh yeah, I'm big for writing contracts, and for me,
Yeah.
I really am.
And for a contract to work, there has to be trust, intimacy, and love. Because if there's none of that, people are not going to agree with the contract. But I do love the fact that you get people to sign their name to it, which is a demonstration of integrity, too. So, with that, Betty, any other comments?
No, I don't have any additional comments.
Carol?
No, I think that's about it. I I love the idea of making a lot of plans with your relationship. I think that's important when for you to sit down and plan to do things together. So to be clear, I like a calendar when I'm dating, that I know that you're going to come to see me. I don't like the pop-ins because I may have rollers in my hair, or may have not brushed my teeth. It may be my dirty day. I don't want to bathe that day. But, and when you have a boyfriend, I think that's important. And and that's important for me to have that kind of relationship that we're going to communicate that I want to see you that day. And then I'll be honest and say, no, today I feel like I want to just lay around and look at soap operas. So I think, and if he wants to go and look at football games and stuff, which I don't care to do, you go look at your football games, and that'll be my self day that I do self maintenance. And the men and my man shouldn't be around when I'm trying to do my facial or when I want to set and do my hair. I don't like that. I don't want him here when I'm trying to roll my hair or doing that. But that may be okay for some people, but that's not good for me. And I think it's clear. It should be clear with your partner. This is what I want.
And it's a learning process.
Yeah.
And as long as people have an understanding that communication is key, then you can get to the level of intimacy that works for you in a relationship with you and your partner. So, with that, I would like to thank everybody for coming and watching Set It Off Senior Style, talking about connections and intimacy. You've turned into Set It Off Senior Style on TAN TV, the African American network, where we have a local feel with a global reach.